My purpose, whatever it is that you want to call it, was about teaching other people that they didn't have to be depressed because of the circumstances of their life. And I seem to always have known that.
You make a really interesting point, because so often people who are depressed or see themselves as depressed, that's part of their identity, and they have great times throughout the day, but at the end of the day they don't remember any of it.
Yes,
you know, and they say,
right.
oh, I'm so depressed all the time.
I think that's one of the key differences between successful and unsuccessful people, by the way, is that successful people have a tendency to really recall the good.
Yes.
When I think of my time in the hospital with appendicitis in 1948, I remember the flowers, and I remember the people. I remember the nurses. There's a big black nurse who would come in and put us on our knee because they had to give us penicillin in those days in these huge, and they used dull needles and huge doses. No. And she was always the one who would coddle me and take it. I mean, I remember seeing my mother every day. I mean, she came to the hospital every day after working where she was, and that was just glorious. I don't remember any other part of it, and I have a tendency to do that. I've been through a divorce, and I talked to my ex-wife, who is now remarried, and I'm remarried, and our lives are in nice places, and we're very good friends and all that. But whenever we would talk about what was going on in our marriage, she would always point out all of these things that I didn't even remember. You didn't take the kid on Halloween. I said, well, I remember being there on Halloween. I don't know whether I just created this or whatever, but I look back on my marriage to my ex-wife as a wonderful time. I think she was great. We just had to move along. I've never looked back and thought, oh, isn't that awful? Never done that. You live your life inside. And it isn't what people do to you, it's how you react to what people do to you that makes the difference between you being a fully functioning person or a victim. That's the way it is in life. It's like the day of the space shuttle crash, all right? I was speaking in Seattle, Washington. It was January the 28th last year. And on the day that I speak, I don't listen to newspapers, I don't read the newspapers or listen to the radio or anything. I want everything to be positive, and it's always very negative. 10 minutes before I go on, someone tells me about this thing, and I feel bad. And I asked the audience, what is it that made me feel bad? And everyone says, well, the space shuttle, and wasn't that terrible? So I said, if the space shuttle crash had made me feel bad, why did it wait 12 hours? All right? It wasn't the crash, it was how I processed it, what I did with it. That's the whole difference in life. It's like when bad things happen out there, you can either get a lesson from it. There are no accidents to me in a perfect universe. There are only lessons. Everything that happens is a lesson, and you either learn from it or you become a victim of it. The way to the big picture often is through seeing the problems in your own life from a different perspective and seeing how difficult other people have it, you know. When you're wondering about how troubled you are, look at the Alzheimer's patient whose mind is slowly slipping away from them, and they even are aware that it's happening and they don't know what to do about it. I mean, coming up here on the airplane yesterday, there was a story in the paper of a man and his wife who just got so desperate that they had to call the police. They have 4 children. 4 little children under the age of 6, just like I do. And they had to call the police because they didn't want to raise them homeless. They didn't want their children, they were being evicted from the final hotel because they had raised their rent from $160 a week to $210, and they just simply didn't have it. And rather than put their children out on the street, they called the police and asked the Department of Human Resources to come and keep their children for them for a while until they could get themselves back together. And I thought, my goodness, I mean, what kind of problems of mine could even be anything near what it must be like to be faced with the idea of having to go out on the street with my children, my little babies. And these were little babies. One was 3, one was 4, and one was 5. Just tiny little children to be out on the streets, on the cold streets. And I made a commitment that I was going to contact them when I get back and try to get them something. And other people are helping them as well. But it also gives you time to get the bigger picture, you know, when you see things like that. It's a good thing to remember. Another thing is that in order to get this bigger picture and get to this place, that you can stop feeling sorry for yourself. You can stop the self-pity because it's happening you've got to trust, you've got to surrender, you've got to know that what's coming your way has a purpose in it, has a lesson in it, that there's order in chaos. And underneath that chaos, you've got to look for that order and look for that blessing. And so one of the things you might have to learn is how to get off of pity and feeling sorry for yourself. And one of the ways to do that is to start focusing on doing something new, doing something different, keeping yourself occupied. Marilyn would go to her knitting. I found myself getting more wrapped up in giving talks because my talks improved, literally improved when I was going through that struggle. And so did my writing, because I was just experiencing more compassion for myself. The way to experience that compassion is to get yourself focused, get yourself on something, doing something, and then generally it will work out. The other thing, when you are concentrating on something else, or when you are doing something else, your mind can't be on what is wrong. And when you get your mind off of what is wrong, you get it on what is right. What is right is what expands. And what is wrong tends to go away.